Let us seek common ground and work in harmony for the prosperity and well-being of all of our residents in our endeavors, and may we be reminded of the strength and unity and the power of collective action for the greater good. With hopeful hearts, we ask for guidance in our governance, that our efforts today contribute to a legacy of peace and progress. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with us. Amen.
Thank you. Stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I will ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Reesner.
Here.
Councilmember Snee.
Here.
Councilmember Thacker.
Here.
Councilmember Hayes.
Here.
Councilmember Herniman.
Here.
Councilmember Kaler.
Here.
Councilmember Jones.
Here.
Thank you. Let the record show all 7 members of council are present this evening. Minutes from May 20th, 2024, regular and committee of the whole meetings were distributed, as well as June 3rd, 2024, regular and committee of the whole meeting minutes. Any questions, corrections, or deletions on either of those? Okay, the minutes will stand approved as presented. We are now under committee reports, starting with Finance Committee. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. A Finance Committee meeting was held Wednesday, June 12, 2024 in council chambers. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss Mayor's request for legislation 24-26, the establishment of a capital projects fund, Mayor's request for legislation 24-28, the OSS grant, Finance Director's legislation for F24-34, the appropriation of additional funds for the HSTS elimination project, any other business that may come before them. Attending were committee members Kevin Reesner, Aaron Jones, John Kaler. Also attending were Mayor Wilkinson, Council members Cheyenne Thacker and Scott Horniman, Law Director Zach Fowler, and Finance Director Kathy Kaufman. Reesner called the meeting to order at 5:17 p.m. Reesner shared the City Administrator Dutro's message, Mayor's request for legislation 24-26, the establishment of Capital Projects Fund. The creation of Fund 332 would better allow the city to plan for future projects, and ensuring that we're adequately investing for capital funding. The city administration has many projects that we feel are important to move forward for our community, and this would be a positive step in the direction of achieving that. The mayor presented the rationale and objectives behind the proposed measure, emphasizing its significance on equipping our city to address future capital improvement requirements. The endorsement of this proposal is anticipated to bolster the long-term development and resilience of our municipality while maintaining the flexibility and unforeseen future exigencies, with the Riverwall and traffic signal malfunctions serving as illustrative contingencies. The law director elaborated on the prospective establishment of the fund, referencing compliance with Section 5705.13 of the Ohio Revised Code, and noted the adoption of similar financial mechanisms by comparable municipalities. A comprehensive dialogue ensued among council members, deliberating on the appropriate allocation of assets, the duration of investment, and the envisaged infrastructure projects. Discussions also revolved around the mechanisms for supervisory oversight and the integration of this initiative with a strategic forecast of departmental leaders, including their own 5-year and 10-year projections. It's agreed that additional information would be sought, and further deliberations will be planned for a subsequent session. Kaler moved to table Mayor's request for legislation 24-26 pending further information, and was seconded by Jones. The motion carried unanimously. Reesner shared City Administrator Dutro's message, Mayor's request for legislation 24-28, the OSS grant. For years, the city of Tiffin was able to utilize funds from OSS to support brush grinding at the Water Pollution Control Center. Unfortunately, with COVID, these dollars dried up, so we had to take on more expenses in offering this program for our residents. We are asking for council to give us the authority to again apply for up to $10,000 in OSS funds to help offset this very popular program for our community. Jones moved to have the law director prepare legislation authorizing the city administrator to take action, apply for, and proceed to sign agreements pertaining to these grant funds, and was seconded by Kaler. The motion carried unanimously. Finance Director Kaufman articulated the necessity for additional funding through the request for legislation 24-34, aimed at supporting the home sewage treatment systems, or also known as HSTS, elimination project. The request by City Engineer Watson increased financial resources is attributed to the discovery of unforeseen elements during the project's execution, necessitating change orders. A notable instance of this expanded scope is the unexpected need to remove an additional septic system. This allocation of funds is critical to ensure the project adheres to the environmental regulations and continues to advance the public health infrastructure. Jones moved to have the law director prepare legislation for this appropriation and was seconded by Kaler. The motion carried unanimously. With no further business, the meeting adjourned at 5:51 p.m.
Thank you. Any questions on that report? Thank you. We are now under Law and Community Planning. Councilmember Kaler.
Thank you, Madam President. The Law and Community Planning Committee met in City Chambers on June 10th, 2024, starting at 5:15 p.m. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss Mayor's request for legislation number 24-22, Mayor's request for legislation number 24-27, as well as any other business to come before the committee. Attending were committee members John Kaler, John Hayes, and Dennis Snee. Also attending were Mayor Lee Wilkinson, Law Director Zachary Fowler, City Engineer Matt Watson, Councilmember Scott Herneman, Councilmember Aaron Jones, and Councilmember Cheyenne Thacker. Attending from the public was Claire Forrest. Councilmember Kaler started the meeting by opening discussions regarding Mayor's request for legislation number 24-22. Mayor's request for legislation number 24-22 asked the committee to recommend that the law director draft legislation approving the purchase of approximately 3 acres of land on Water Street to be used for the construction of an off-site treatment facility. The purchase would be a step in the direction towards completing the City of Tiffin's long-term control plan with the EPA to build a high-rate treatment HRT facility. The HRT would be built in place of an EQ basin. The cost of building an HRT facility is estimated to be about $19.5 million, while the cost of building an EQ basin is about $50 million. Therefore, the cost savings to the city is estimated to be about $30 million. The purchase price of the land in question would be $400,000. The property was appraised by Bill Jones of Remax Property for $375,000. City administration feels that the cost is justified because the property is in the right location, is not in a floodplain, and does not have any residences or other buildings that would need to be demolished, thus saving the city the additional cost of demolition. Councilmember John Hayes moved to recommend that the law director draft legislation approving the purchase of approximately 3 acres of land on Water Street to be used for the construction of an off-site treatment facility. Councilmember Dennis Snee seconded the motion. The motion carried with a vote of 3-0. Kaler next addressed Mayor's request for legislation number 24-27. Mayor's request for legislation number 24-27 proposes some changes to the City of Tiffin's zoning code. The main change to the zoning code would adopt certain residential infill development standards. The purpose of those standards would be to ensure the single-family and two-family residential structures reflect, complement, and preserve the nature and the character of existing adjacent residential development. Such a change to the zoning code would preserve the look, feel, and value of existing neighborhoods by making sure that new builds match the look and feel of the existing neighborhood. There is currently no provision in the zoning code that addresses aesthetics or matching the existing neighborhood. Other proposed changes to the zoning code include certain size restrictions on accessory buildings, such as garages, and making nursing or convalescent homes permitted uses in certain zoning districts rather than conditionally permitted uses. Councilmember Dennis Snee moved to recommend that the law director draft legislation changing the zoning code as suggested by City Engineer Matt Watson. Councilmember John Hayes seconded the motion. The motion carried with a vote of 3-0. In other business, Law Director Zachary Fowler indicated that in the near future, he will be asking for legislation regarding the annexation of some new property into the city of Tiffin. With no other business to discuss, the meeting adjourned at 6:28 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, Councilmember Kaler. We are now under materials and equipment. Councilmember Jones.
No reports, Madam President.
Thank you. Personnel and Labor Relations, Councilmember Hayes.
Thank you, Madam President. A Personnel and Labor Relations Committee meeting was held at City Chambers on June 6, 2024. Purposes of this meeting was to discuss Mayor's request for legislation 24-24, an additional position to the Tiffin Fire Rescue Division, and Mayor's request for legislation 24-23, an appointment to the Architectural Board of Review, and any other business to come before the committee. Attending were committee members John Hayes, Cheyenne Thacker, and John Kaler. Also attending were council members Scott Horniman, Dennis Snee, and Aaron Jones. Mayor Lee Wilkinson, City Administrator Nick Dutro, Law Director Zachary Fowler, and Fire Chief Rob Chappell. Councilman Hayes called the meeting to order at 5:31 p.m. and opened with the mayor's request for an additional position to the Tiffin Fire Rescue Division. City Administrator Dutro explained how the 2024 budget initially did not include this position. However, due to the financial position of the city, right now the opportunity to add this position is available. Fire Chief Chappell reported the current staffing numbers for Tiffin Fire's 3 crews and explained this additional staffing position will increase staff above the minimum on Crew 3. Chappell said staffing was reduced during COVID and now the city is on the path to what is considered normal staffing numbers. Mayor Wilkinson and Chappell explained the cost of an additional staffing member could at times save the city money by not having to pay overtime wages to keep the required number of staff on hand. Dutro stated the city is in a position financially to maintain this position into the new year. Councilwoman Thacker motioned to have the law director draft legislation to accept the additional position, and Councilman Kaler seconded. The motion carried on a vote of 3-0. Hayes introduced Mayor's request for legislation 24-23, an appointment to the Architectural Board of Review. Wilkinson stated the candidate has previously worked on architecture projects in town, including the East Green Amphitheater and Seneca County Museum. Wilkinson also explained the opening is due to a Board of Review member resigning. Law Director Fowler stated the member qualifications for being appointed to the Architectural Board of Review. Hayes motioned to have the law director draft legislation for an appointment to the Architectural Board of Review, and Thacker seconded. Motion carried on a vote of 3-0, and with no other business, the meeting was adjourned at 5:50 p.m. And that concludes my report.
You any questions? Right, Recreation and Public Property, Councilmember Snee.
Madam President, no report at this time.
Right, Street, Sidewalks, and Sewers, Councilmember Thacker.
No report, Madam President.
Doesn't that feel good to say that? Okay. Economic Development and Downtown Planning, Councilmember Horniman.
Thank you, Madam President. An Economic Development and Downtown Planning Committee meeting was called to order at 6:32 p.m. on June 10th, 2024. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss Mayor's request for legislation 24-25 and Finance Director's request for legislation F24-28. Both requests pertain to the Assistant Prosecutor position. In attendance were committee members Scott Horniman, Cheyenne Thacker, and Aaron Jones. Also in attendance were Mayor Lee Wilkinson and Law Director Zachary Fowler. Horniman read both written requests out loud. Then he asked the law director if he would like to draft legislation as 2 separate ordinances or as one piece of legislation pertaining to the position of assistant prosecutor. The law director confirmed he would draft one piece of legislation because they cover the same topic. Horniman then read aloud a letter/email from City Administrator Nick Dutro supporting the legislation and indicating that no new funding would be required in the current city budget. He also indicated that this position would significantly help the workload required for the city prosecutor and keep that office functioning in a positive manner. Thacker then asked how this position would break down their time between county and city responsibilities. Law Director Zachary Fowler answered that the candidate will be a full-time employee of the county, 32 hours, but the bulk of their time would be spent with the city. Thacker then commented that she thought it was a good solution due to the amount of work that prosecutors take on with their caseloads. Fowler then offered to explain how the partnership between the city and county prosecutor offices works. He explained that the partnership mimics the 2017 agreement between the city and the county. He also explained that the candidate currently works in Erie County and is in the process of joining the Sisters of St. Francis. She needs another year of public service to satisfy her requirement on student loan debt. The total annual contract is for $41,074.61. The city would cover $21,000 for the remaining months of this year. If the candidate leaves prior to the end of this year or any time through the contract, a portion of that money would be returned to the city. Jones then asked if this was a temporary fix. Fowler agreed it was a temporary fix, but sets up someone in case the city or county has a prosecutor move on. This position would most likely have the ability and knowledge to step into a full-time role. He added that the assistant prosecutor would give the current city prosecutor needed time when he is not in court and to review cases and handle appeals. Currently, the prosecutor is putting in 8 to 10 hours a week of overtime. Thacker said she hoped this solution between the city and county works out because finding an attorney for any part-time position is difficult due to student loan repayment. Horniman then commented that having the law director focus on the city's concerns and protecting our interests is best for his role. Having the law director pulled away to prosecute a traffic ticket was not the best use of his time. Fowler commented that the law director's role is more involved and needed at a city level more than in the past. Thacker commented that the roles of prosecutor and law director are two very different skill sets and that the city would be best served having our attorneys focus on their specialties. Horniman then advised the committee that the reason these requests were sent to the Economic Development and Downtown Planning Committee rather than Labor Relations is because Councilmember Kaler is on that committee and has a conflict of interest due to his job as a defense attorney. Thacker made a motion for the law director to draft legislation to correspond with Mayor's request 24-25 and Finance Director's request of F25-28. Jones seconded the motion. The motion carried 3-0. With no further business coming before the committee, adjournment was at 6:49 p.m.
Thank you. Any questions on that report? Thank you. We are now under Committee of the Whole. Does anyone see the need to schedule a Committee of the Whole meeting? All right, we are now under reports of the officers. His Honor Mayor Lee Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam President. So I want to take this opportunity to kind of go over lots of activities that are happening this week and this weekend. So get your calendars out and get ready to mark these down. Starting on Wednesday, June 19th is the celebration of Juneteenth. I believe the post offices will be closed, but city offices will be open. Thursday Night Tunes at 7 o'clock on the East Screen featuring No Eileen. Also Thursday, June 20th is the third Thursday, and I'm going to pronounce this incorrectly with the French, Fête de la Musique. Anyway, it's from 5 to 8 p.m. downtown Tiffin, so hope to see you there. It'll be a good time for all. Saturday, there's a Steve Smith car show at the Willows of Tiffin from noon to 3. Also Saturday, there's a Family Fest at Hedges Boyer Park from 11 to 3. So this is put on by the Seneca County Family and Children First Council. There will be inflatables and fun and crafts and food, and it's free. On Friday at 4 p.m., there's a groundbreaking for the Heidelberg Fieldhouse. And also on Friday is the 50th anniversary celebration at the Belmar. They have a 5 p.m. ribbon cutting, and they continue celebrating on Saturday from 2 to 11 p.m. Let's see, Saturday also, Sunday 6. Also, Saturday, there's a walk for recovery at Hedges Boyer Park. Lots of stuff going on. From 10 a.m. to noon, there will be entertainment, speakers, and prizes. And I'm sure a walk in there somewhere too. And I saved the best for last. I have a proclamation here. I want to go ahead and read the proclamation, then we'll have a discussion after that. So I have this proclamation here. for the Tiffin Crawl. Whereas the Tiffin Crawl was established in 1994 by Kathee and Steve Bruno, marking the beginning of a cherished community tradition that has spanned 30 years. And whereas the Tiffin Crawl has made significant contributions to our community, raising and donating over $100,000 to local charities, thereby providing invaluable support to children in our area. And whereas this annual event, held on the fourth Saturday in June, brings together residents and visitors alike, fostering a spirit of camaraderie and community engagement. And whereas the dedication and generosity of Kathee and Steve Bruno, along with the countless volunteers and participants, have made the Tiffin Crawl a beacon of goodwill and a source of pride for our city. And whereas the positive impact of the Tiffin Crawl on local charities and the children they serve is a testament to the power of community involvement and the enduring legacy of this beloved event. Now, therefore, I, Lee Wilkinson, Mayor of the City of Tiffin, do hereby acknowledge and commend Kathee and Steve Bruno for establishing the Tiffin Crawl and for their outstanding contributions to our community. And I encourage all citizens to participate in and support this wonderful event, celebrating its rich history and the positive difference it continues to make in the lives of so many. And we have Kathee and Steve Bruno here with their family. And I believe that Steve and Kathee are going to tell us a little bit more about the Tiffin Crawl coming up this Saturday.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Steve Bruno. This is my wife, Kathee. When I first moved to Tiffin, I lived on Frost Parkway, and it was in the early 90s. And we had a room set up that we threw darts. And with that, of course, we had a few adult malted beverages. And somebody came up with an idea, well, why don't we get some shirts made and walk around to all the bars in Tiffin? So 1994 was the year the Market Street Bridge was out. So that goes back a little ways. So with that, there were 20 of us doing that, 20 shirts. So we decided, well, let's see what happens and do it next year. It grew to 60 shirts. By the third year, we were 120 shirts and decided, hey, there's an opportunity here. Why don't we do something with this, sell the shirts for a little bit more, make donations to local organizations with kids. That was in 1996. So last year, we sold 645 shirts. We had raffles and other things going with that. With that, we issued an agenda, and we walked to start on one end of town and walk to all the clubs and bars. Everybody has a shirt, sell the shirts, and that's where we raise all the money from. Thank you, Lee. Lee's passed out our invitation and then our history sheet for all the years. The shirts are a different color each year. They all have a different saying on them. This is this year's, it's Heather Peach. So we are still crazy at Bruno's Bar and Grill. With last year's, we raised, from selling the shirts, having raffles, we raised a little over $7,200. And then with the donations from all the organizations, we raised another $7,300. So last year, the Ritz Theater Discovery Series benefited over $14,600 from the Tiffin Crawl. If you look on the sheet here, it was summarized. Shirts are a different color every year. Everybody gets upset. They don't know the color. But we have fun with it. And it's grown from friends of friends of friends of friends. We really don't advertise a lot. Everybody's just having a good time. So what I tell people, or what we tell people, is if they want to know about the crawl, stop in at the Legion at 5 o'clock. The Legion has allowed us to use their room upstairs for the last 5, 6, 7 years to display every shirt from every year, every agenda from every year, and every note from every organization where we've made donations. So it's really the way to learn about the crawl. Kathee, anything?
No.
So as you can see, this year's the Heather Peach. It turned out really nice. We sell the shirts for $20 and pay for the shirts. And then everything that's left over from the selling of the shirts goes to local organizations to do with kids. This year, the recipient is the Seneca County 4-H Youth Development Program. So all the funds from the crawl will be going to that.
Amazing.
Excellent.
Any questions? Lee?
Can you buy a shirt at the American Legion at 5 o'clock
Yes, we will have shirts there, or as it says on the invite, they can give us a call. We still have shirts left.
Amazing. And I imagine we're putting all of this on our website, the information, to get it out there? Or maybe-
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
We do have a Facebook page.
Oh,
Tiffin
great.
Crawl also.
Thank you.
But leave a message with your name and number and what size shirt and how many you need.
Awesome. Thank you so
So we have a
much.
great time with it.
Amazing.
We've seen a few changes to a few places in downtown Tiffin over the years.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Look
you.
forward to seeing you on Saturday.
Yep,
you very much.
thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, and that concludes my report, Madam President.
Right, thank you. Clerk of Council, Ann Forrest.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I want to report that we have received the fees from the petitioner for the alley vacation number 2024-02 under ordinance 24-41, so we can proceed with the third reading.
Thank you very much. Director of Finance, Kathy Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the financial report for the month of May 2024. Total receipts for the month were $5,160,433.81. Total expenses for the month were $6,330,145.34. The general fund unencumbered balance is $5,246,964.73. Income tax receipts for May 2024 were $911,131.01. Total increase in income tax receipts in May 2024 compared to May 2023 was $7,488.07. The annual increase in income tax receipts is 6.32% year-to-date. The 0.25% portion of income tax receipts that was transferred into Fund 215 for public streets for May 2024 was $108,211.58. The unexpended balance for all funds is $39,792,228.47, which is the same as the bank balances for the same time period. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Reesner.
I move to accept the finance director's report and bank reconciliation for month ending May 2024.
Thank you. There's a motion to accept the finance director's report and bank reconciliation for the month of May. Is there a second? Councilmember Snee.
I second that motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Director of Law, Zach Fowler.
Yeah, just briefly. Ordinance 47, it's up for its first reading tonight. I would just ask for suspension. Again, the contract will start July 1. So we would like it suspended and passed with an emergency tonight so we can do that contract if you're so willing. And then also the transfer, it's budget neutral. We're just moving 21,000 out of that 25,000 you've appropriated.
Thank you. Any questions? Is that everything?
Yes, that is all.
Okay. All right, we are now under written communications.
Thank you. We have Mayor's request for legislation number 24-29, pay increase for non-union staff.
Mayor's request for legislation number 24-29 will be assigned to the Personnel and Labor Relations Committee.
Finance Director's request for legislation number F24-33 to amend the 2024 Budget Ordinance 23-94 to appropriate funds into the capital improvement and One Ohio opioid budgets.
Finance Director's request for legislation number F24-33 is prepared tonight as Ordinance 24-51 and Ordinance 24-52.
Finance Director's request for legislation number F24-34 to amend the 2024 Budget Ordinance 23-94 to appropriate funds into the sewer fund budget.
Finance Director's request for legislation number F24-34 is prepared tonight as Ordinance 24-51.
Finance Director's request for legislation number F24-35 to amend the 2024 budget ordinance 23-94 to appropriate funds into the fire department budget.
Finance Director's request for legislation number F24-35 is prepared tonight as ordinance 24-46.
And that concludes the written communications.
Thank you. We are now under oral communications. Anyone wishing to address council may step to the podium, sign in, and direct their questions to myself. Okay, we are now under motions. Are there any motions this evening? We are now under resolutions and ordinances.
Resolution number 2024-30, introduced by John Hayes, a resolution approving mayor's appointment of Amber Clayson to serve an unexpired term on the Architectural Board of Review from the date of this resolution through December 31st, 2024.
Thank you. This is the first reading of Resolution 24-30. Councilmember Hayes.
I'd like to move for passage of Resolution 2024-30.
Thank you. There's a motion for passage of Resolution 2024-30. Is there a second? Councilmember Thacker.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote on the passage.
Councilmember Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
And Jones.
Yes.
Resolution 24-30 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 2024-39, introduced by John Kaler, an ordinance approving a contract with the Seneca Industrial and Economic Development Corporation for administrative services of a comprehensive economic development program and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the third reading of ordinance 24-39. Councilmember Kaler.
Madam President, I move for the passage of ordinance 2024-39.
Thank you. There's a motion for passage of ordinance 24-39. Is there a second? Councilmember Horniman.
I'll second that motion, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Horniman.
This is the ordinance for the renewal of the TSEP or Tiffin Seneca Economic Partnership Agreement. And I just want to say that TSEP is an absolute asset to our community, and they're a wonderful professional group of people to work with, and really appreciate everything they do for our community.
Agree. Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll first vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
And Jones.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
And Jones.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-39 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 2024-41, introduced by Cheyenne Thacker, an ordinance responding to petition number 2024-02, vacating the alley off of West Market Street, running north-south between lot number 598 of Hemmings Resurvey and the alley off of St. Clair Street, running east-west between lot numbers 596 and 597 and lot number 15, all of Hemmings Resurvey in the 3rd Ward of the City of Tiffin, Ohio.
Thank you. This is the third reading of ordinance 24-41. Councilmember Thacker.
I move for passage of ordinance 2024-39. 41.
That's okay. That's okay. There is a motion for passage of ordinance 24-41. Is there a second? Councilmember Reesner.
Now second, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote on the passage.
Councilmember Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
And Jones.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-41 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 2024-43, introduced by Kevin Reesner, an ordinance adopting a tax budget for fiscal year 2025, directing the Director of Finance to deliver the budget to the Seneca County Auditor and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the second reading of ordinance 24-43.
Ordinance number 2024-45, introduced by John Kaler, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of real property on Water Street.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 24-45.
Ordinance number 2024-46, introduced by John Hayes, an ordinance amending the 2024 budget ordinance 23-94 to appropriate funds into the fire department budget.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 24-46.
Ordinance number 2024-47, introduced by Scott Herneman, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to sign an agreement with Seneca County and the Seneca County Prosecutor's Office authorizing the transfer of $21,000 from the prosecutor's budget to the Director of Law's budget and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 24-47. Councilmember Herniman.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to move that for immediate passage of ordinance 2024-47, suspending the City Council's 3-reading rule and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. There's a motion for immediate passage and suspending council's 3-reading rule of ordinance 24-47. Is there a second? Councilmember Reesner.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will first vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
I abstain due to a potential conflict of interest.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Thank you. The suspension passes with a vote of 6-0 with 1 abstaining. Sorry, we will now vote on the emergency. Sorry.
Oh, that's right.
Sorry.
Back to the page. Councilmember Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
And Jones.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 6-0.
Councilmember Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
And Jones.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-47 passes with a vote of 6-0.
Ordinance number 2024-48, an ordinance zoning 79.506 acres of land, more or less, owned by David J. Wagner and Alan T. Wagner, trustees, and Ann E. Forrest and Claire M. Forrest Jr., co-executors of the estate of Martha Ann Forrest in the Second Ward of the city, as Zone M2 Heavy Industrial District, compatible with adjacent land use and meeting requirements of the Tiffin City Charter and codified ordinances.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 24-48.
Ordinance number 2024-49, introduced by John Kaler, an ordinance to enact residential infill development standards in the zoning code and amend sections 1167.03, 1169.03, 1181.01, and 1181.05 of the zoning code.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 24-49.
Ordinance number 2024-50, introduced by Kevin Reesner, an ordinance authorizing all actions necessary to apply to and receive from the Ottawa, Sandusky, Seneca Joint Solid Waste District's competitive funding grant and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 24-50. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for immediate passage of ordinance 2024-50, suspending City Council's reading rule.
Thank you. There's a motion to suspend council's 3-reading rule and immediate passage of ordinance 24-50. Is there a second? Councilmember Thacker.
I'll second that motion.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will first vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
And Jones.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
And Jones.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
And Jones.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-50 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 2024-51, introduced by Kevin Reesner, An ordinance amending the 2024 budget ordinance 23-94 to appropriate funds into the capital improvement budget and sewer fund budget.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 24-51. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for immediate passage of ordinance 2024-51, suspending City Council's three reading rule.
Thank you. There's a motion to suspend council's three reading rule and passage of ordinance 24-51. Is there a second? Councilmember Jones.
I second that motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will first vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
And Jones.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
And Jones.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-51 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 2024-52, introduced by Kevin Reesner, an ordinance amending the 2024 budget ordinance 23-94 to appropriate funds into the annual budget.
This is the first reading of ordinance 24-52. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for immediate passage of ordinance 2024-52, suspending City Council's reading rule.
Thank you. There is a motion to suspend council's three reading rule and immediate passage of ordinance 24-52. Is there a second? Councilmember Herniman.
I'll second that, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will first vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
And Jones.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
Kaler.
Yes.
And Jones.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-52 passes with a vote of 7-0.
And that concludes the legislation.
Thank you. All right, we are now under other business. We have a couple public hearing notices that I need to announce. The first one is a public hearing notice for July 1st, 2024 at 7 p.m. regarding the tax budget. And then the second public hearing notice is a joint public hearing with the Planning Commission for July 15th at 7 p.m. regarding the zoning items, so ordinance 24-48 and ordinance 24-49. Is there anything else to come before council this evening? Councilmember Hayes.
Yes, I'd like to propose scheduling a Personnel and Labor Relations Committee meeting for next Monday, June 24th at 5:30 p.m. This would be to discuss Mayor's request for legislation 24-29, sorry.
Yeah, I can make that work. I just have a hard out at 6.
Okay. You said 5:30?
Yes.
Yeah, I can do that.
That'll work.
Okay, thank you. Announce a meeting for Personnel and Labor Relations next Monday, June 24th at 5:30 p.m. to discuss Mayor's request for legislation 24-29. This is a pay increase for non-union staff
And any other business?
and any other business.
In council chambers, I'm assuming?
Correct, yes, thank you.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Any other business to come before council this evening? City Administrator.
Oh, you raised your hand first. All right, fair enough. I just wanted to let everyone know, obviously last week was, I shouldn't say obviously, last week was the Rumpke bulk pickup. We do appreciate Rumpke for offering that service. They don't do that for every community they work in, so it is really great that they are able to offer that. And I know that a number of people use that program. I wanted to provide the information for the tonnages that were collected last week. So for all of last week, the tonnages for the bulk pickup, they collected 141.47 tons. In comparison, last year they collected 108.83 tons, so quite an increase this year in what they picked up. In my records, and I haven't gotten a chance today, I've been digging out of my email inbox. In the past few years, 2021 was our record-setting year, from what I can tell, at 187.16 tons. So I think people were cleaning out their closets and garages while they were home on lockdown from that time period. But It was a successful event. We just had a couple of folks that went well above what was required or what the maximum was to leave out. So I think it went pretty well from what I understand, and I appreciate everyone for working with us and the rules that were established. So, and thank definitely Rumpke for providing that service.
Absolutely. Law Director.
Something I just meant to mention earlier is you'll notice in both the zoning ordinance for the property that's being annexed and then what you'll see on the annexation petition is that our council clerk is involved on that. So she is asked about, do I have a conflict? She's been advised she doesn't have one because she's doing essentially just ministerial duties. She's just performing what's required, and she's not voting on any of this. That she could perform those duties without it being a conflict under the Ohio ethics laws. All she's asked is that when it comes to voting for council, she'd like an acting clerk for that role so that she's not taking the roll call on the votes. So when that comes up, just something to consider. You can appoint myself, you can appoint Liz, you can appoint Nick, it's your choice, but that's all that she asked for. So does anyone have questions on the conflict or anything like that?
Yeah, when do we do that appointment then? Is that,
You could do it the day that it'll come up for votes on the day of its third.
okay, under motions or, okay. Got it. Anyone else have any questions? Okay. Does anyone else have anything to come before council this evening?
I do want to mention one thing, if
Yep,
that's okay.
absolutely.
So I noticed that, and you probably have all noticed this too, like between 6:45 and 7, we have discussions just to bring everybody up to date on the ordinances that we're going to be reading and some, especially the ones that are going to be voted on. Just for the general public's knowledge, it would be really nice if we would also have some of that same discussion again during the reading of the ordinances that we're voting on so that the public has a better idea of like what it means when we're transferring funds from the general fund into, let's say, the firefighters fund, and they know what it's for. So if we could try to keep that in mind as we get to an ordinance that we're actually voting on for that discussion, that would be helpful.
Sure. Thank you. Anything else to come before council this evening? All right, seeing none, we can adjourn. Thank you all.
Okay.
So when we have, just to help our discussion, I don't know if there's any. So with the discussion on that, so long.
That's in here too.
Pending legislation?
Like when you.
I got all these dates, the red type.
Okay, I just copy and paste from the actual ordinance, so that's where that comes from.